Oh, okay. Well, I think if he's that close by, hopefully. We will go ahead and start our town board work session for October 14th, because I know one of the first things we want to do is meet the new employees before we dive into some of the budget presentations. So who's gonna kick us off, Mr.
Yeah,
Young?
I think Eric has 2 employees he can introduce us to.
So, Mayor and Board, it gives me great pleasure tonight to introduce 2 fabulous young ladies who are both in guest service coordinator roles at the front desk of the rec center. Nicole Keith is on my right. She's from Arizona, been here a couple of years, getting ready to go back and finish her nursing degree and is into weightlifting. She's not a Broncos fan.
No.
And so, with that,
I'm sure you want
welcome and tell them a little bit about yourself.
And I'm sorry, I didn't catch the last name.
Nicole Keith.
Keith. Okay.
Hello, yeah, like you said, I've lived here for 2 years now. My family has lived here for 4, just kind of followed along. Finishing up my nursing degree. I currently have 1 dog, it's a boxer, and then 1 cat, a Calico Coat. I love weightlifting. I've just recently signed up for what is it called, Ragnar, and other things. So I'm trying to figure out how to maneuver into that world. So pray for me. That's about it.
And then our other new employee is Elia Gonzalez, who's on my left. She's from California, has a recreation degree from San Diego State University, and last week I think was her first time driving in the snow. And she's also not a Broncos fan.
Hi everybody, so I'm Elia, I'm from Santa Barbara County. As he said, last week was my first time dealing with snow, so that was very exciting. I think it took me like an hour and 20 minutes to get to work. And I very much enjoyed being here so far. I'm excited to see all the new things that I get to try out, like hopefully snowboarding and skiing. And yeah, I'm looking forward to all the different activities I'll get to do basically here. So thank you.
So you live about 4 blocks away and it took you an hour?
I live in Evans, so everyone was driving, I think, like 20 miles an hour for a good 30 minutes.
At least everyone behind you.
Pardon? You go. No, you
He
go.
has somebody that drives in. David's got his own driver. He talks like he drives all the time.
My driver's name is Jack Daniels. Doesn't work out very well.
And then Scott, do you want to introduce David? Sure.
I'd like to introduce David Eisenbrown, who we stole from the city of Loveland, and we're very lucky to have him. We got to know David actually before he even interviewed. We've worked with him on the Fairgrounds Avenue IGA, and he's a great addition to staff. Let you say anything about yourself.
Yeah, sounds good. So good evening. So my wife and I moved to Colorado about 5 years ago, built a house up in Fort Collins, so we're a little bit traitorous for now living in Windsor. But yeah, started out in Virginia as a transportation planner, then headed down south to be the annexation coordinator in Columbia, South Carolina for a while. Realized I was a terrible southerner, wanted to get out to Colorado, came here, and have loved it ever since. So been working with Loveland in the planning world for the last 5 years or so, doing transportation master plans and parking studies, downtown stuff. So basically now I'm just going to repeat all that here.
Yeah, he'll fit right in with all of the projects that we've got going on. And he just finished up the Loveland downtown parking plan, and we're just getting ready to update ours, so lucky to have him.
Glad we stole you.
Yeah.
And then the final one, we have Corinne. Is Corinne going to introduce?
She's not here.
Okay,
She had
all right.
another function to go to, so I get to introduce Ian Erickson. In fact, this is how we wrap up your very first day of being employed here, is to come to the board. So Ian started today, he's done his onboarding, and he's ready to get started, and we're excited to have him because that makes a full house for IT. Can you give us a little?
So I've lived in Fort Collins probably 20 years. Moved out here with my family when I was a little kid. And I just love computers. I have a passion for technology. I worked at a nonprofit in Fort Collins called the Matthews House for the past 3 years. I was the sole IT guy, did all of their infrastructure, networking, servers, all of that sort of stuff. And I'm ready for the next, challenge, trying to figure out everything you guys got going on here and get involved.
That's all of them, Mayor.
Was that it? Okay, well, welcome. Welcome. We want to welcome you all to Windsor and hope you have a long, successful career here.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll get started this evening with 2020 operations budget presentations, and the first one is Public Works. Yeah, Terry, are you gonna?
You are welcome to say.
Now, some of this from what we got last time? Just have to.
So the first slide kind of depicts the employees that are going to be onboarding in 2020. And so I put 4/1/2020 for the Director of Public Services. It'll be in that time frame, somewhere in that area. The equipment operator for storm drain tech, half the salary will become out of storm drainage, half out of streets. The reason being is that this person will help with the MS4 regulations and do sweeping during the summer, help with snow plowing during the winter, and any other function that we need to use them at. So wastewater treatment plant operator C, as most of you know, the plant, we're running on both sides of the plant now. So our plant's currently at about 64% capacity. So it was time to bring on another employee because two of them working every other weekend was getting a little old, they're getting a little burned out. So now we'll have a third person that we can have in there and get them trained and stuff for what presently exists, plus what we're going to be implementing here in the very near future with the biosolids handling and the blower change out and possibly adding on to our plan here in the next 3 to 4 years. And then a part-time custodian for facilities with the addition of all the new area out at the Public Works site. It's time to bring on another part-time custodial in facilities. And what that does is when someone's either sick or when they're on vacation, we have someone that kind of can fit in and help. And the same with our part-time facility tech. That person will be helping out with all of the mechanical and stuff in all of our buildings, but also help out with like changing filters, light bulbs, ballasts, stuff like that, depending on the workload of the other two, that person will have time to do the other stuff. So that's just a quick review of the new jobs that will be coming forward. Any questions on that?
Yeah, the Director of Public Service, where is that on the flow chart? The organization?
Yeah, so that is
Yeah.
that was part of the reorganization, Ken, and that's a
Okay.
position that'll oversee public works and planning, or I'm sorry, not planning, parks, recs, and culture. So that was, the board approved that last year. And I put in my transmittal letter to the board. I kind of described that, just initially we were going to do the community development director first, then this position didn't happen, Administrative Services.
Okay, I got you.
With the turnover of staff, we kind of fast-tracked and flipped. We did Administrative Services first. So that was our first hire, then we did community development director, and obviously that took quite a while to get right. And then we kind of hit a point where we're in budget season, going through another major hire for department head at that level, and it's going to be time consuming. And then secondly, we know this person will be housed at the Public Works campus when we get the new building. So I kind of met with Eric and Terry and said, I'm thinking we should probably hold off, wait until next year to start this, based on just the time it's going to take to hire and where we're going to put them. So that's why Terry says about April 1st, just because quite frankly, until we have an office for them, I don't want to time it out to start them and just say, well, here's your snow plow to sit in or whatever that conversation is. So does that 40,000 represent 2/3 of the year? Is that the
No,
idea?
I'm not exactly sure where that 40,000, I didn't do that slide, and it seems,
Yeah.
well, that's about a third of the year.
Yeah, it's about a third of it.
Yeah, so that would be, really, I think for next year, the cost would probably be more or less $80,000. That was probably borrowed from last year's slide or something, and just didn't
get on the right, so that
I didn't see
40,000.
anybody raise their hand that wanted to take responsibility for the slide.
Well, no, I'm.
I'm taking responsibility.
Oh,
Yeah, it's Terry's.
all right, it's Terry.
But it may not be a bad idea to consider putting that job out sooner rather than later, just because of what we saw with the other one that had to go out twice. And I know, not last year, but the one year when we actually went out for a new town manager and we did it in December, we worked very quickly, but actually that was a good time of year because a lot of folks take that downtime. And then they're kind of looking at, have time to answer, create a resume, and get that in. So I just would want to make sure we don't cut ourselves short there, and maybe we should start that process sooner rather than later. If we find somebody good and they have to be housed somewhere else for
Yeah,
30 days, I don't think that would be
Yeah.
a big, huge deal.
yeah.
Right, well,
Where's the idea because of the holidays too, not to be trying to go out?
Well, no, I would think that the mayor's got a point. I think for me, I would still try to target closer to that April 1st to have that hired, but I think it's a good point as far as maybe giving us a longer process instead of having, 6 weeks, maybe give it 8 to 10 weeks, make sure we give ourselves a nice lead-in time where we really give candidates some time to apply.
Well, because you don't know January there might be some unexpected things that really are gonna start tying up time. Whereas we kind of know we're kind of hopefully going into a little bit more of a lull.
Right.
And that would give you a little bit more open window.
Right, well, in all that time, getting the ad out and doing those things are really not time consuming. It's just when you get the resumes, if you have 60 of them and you're gonna go and give each one your focus to do that, it just takes time. And then, the whole process just gets to be pretty intense.
I've thought too about, I know what you're saying about space for someone to work in office space, but quite often organizations, in my background in public schools, would be overcrowded, 2 or 3 people are sharing an office, so for a temporary period. So I think whatever timetable helps us get the best person available should be the guideline.
Sure, okay.
If they have to work in your car, well,
Yeah, back to you. Well, again, it was really just hitting the, after community development director being in full swing of budget, and there's just not time capacity right now to put the effort that this needs.
Can I play the devil's advocate when it comes to the wastewater treatment plant operator? C, whatever that means. Is that kind of a laborer position, or is it a highly skilled, have your degree in that kind of?
That's a
thing,
lower,
or-
it starts at the lowest is operator D, so it's just basically a classification. So operator C is low, A is the more credentialed person. And so this is basically saying we would hire kind of more of a laborer person with a low amount of background in it right now, and then we train them at the plant.
And they have to have so many years' experience before they can go on and get their B. So
Okay.
if we hire them as a C, they'll get that experience and be able to take the B in the future.
Okay.
So future budget discussions, it could be reclassification if the person did well and developed a few
Well,
years down the road.
and we would actually just do that internally, things like that, when people, achieve a higher classification, and really we should have that completely addressed in our, salary codes.
Right.
So we would have operators kind of graded based on their level of expertise.
Okay.
Okay.
Utilities start on page 39 in your budget books.
And these are just the highlights of the budget. If the board wants to go back and look at streets, public works, and get into a little more detail, we can do that. But I'm just gonna highlight the things here. So, under the best BMPs for the MS4 regulations, that's all gonna be coming into effect over the next few years. So we have to have the best management practices in place so we can manage the MS4 regulations. You'll see an increase in postage due to the number of new accounts. When you add as many building permits as we're getting and as many citizens and houses, then we gotta include an increase in postage. 2020 will be the second year contract with Vector Disease Control. And that will be at $97,572. And it increases 2.5% increase for the third year, which will be 2021, which will be $100,011.
Is that a self-sustaining program?
Yes.
Okay.
Terry, the postage, is there a chance to convert to electronic?
They have that option.
The resident, each resident does?
They do. We have about a 40% chip pick on electronic, and we do campaigns to try to get more people
Sure.
to. But we keep adding a lot of accounts, and we still have to mail. People still like that paper, for sure.
That's funny. Okay.
So-
We don't like the paper, but we haven't figured out how to.
So vectors are mosquito folks?
Yes.
And so how do we, I guess, when we look, how do we analyze whether or not we feel like they, you know, like they're doing a good job? Or, I mean, do they have any competition, first of all? I mean, are they the only ones who offer it? I had a lot of folks this year at my coffee with the mayor who really complained about mosquitoes. And I don't know if it was, you know, just happened to be where they lived, you know, or not, or how do we determine, like?
Well, a lot of times when we get complaints on mosquitoes, they're not really mosquitoes. Because it's early enough in the year, they say the mosquitoes are huge. Well, those aren't mosquitoes. And the way I determine it is they go around and they find all of the areas which we have standing water. I think at this year at the peak was somewhere around 304 places. So they treat all of those places with larvae to kill as many of the mosquitoes as they can.
And they
then
document all that?
They document all that. It's sent out as a record, and then we send it out to the board to look at. When we started doing that, once we start getting all the data from them, then we start passing it on to the board. I think the key thing is that they have traps all in and around Windsor, but they will not spray until they have over 100 mosquitoes in one trap. Once they have 100 mosquitoes in one trap, then they feel like they're becoming nuisance mosquitoes and they need to go ahead and spray for those mosquitoes. Now, what you'll see in August, September, and those months, and late July, that's when you'll see more of the Culex mosquito coming in. And that's the mosquito that gets West Nile onto the human beings and the animals and stuff. So, but they try to keep all that under control, and they're spraying every week, different parts of the town. Are you gonna have some areas like closer to the rivers and stuff that are a little worse than others? Yeah, but I think they do a great job. So, it's easy to complain, but I think they do a really good job.
Right, and we do track, we get those complaints, and actually, Mayor, I had fewer complaints this year than I did last year. I think just kind of the drier summer. But when we get those, I check with Terry, we pull the records, say, have they sprayed there, what's the mosquito count? Really, I think last year the complaints I had were because, I had to bring it up, but with our growth, there were areas that we didn't have vector going yet because they hadn't been in town the year before. And so, but when we do, if we get any complaints, it comes to town hall, I check with Terry, we check the records, see have they sprayed there.
Yeah. See, mine was the opposite. I never had complaints before, and this was the first year I had.
Huh.
And I just reach out to Brooks Bose with vector disease control, and she gives me an answer right back.
But who did we had somebody before Vector, they're not new.
Yeah, it was Colorado Mosquito Control, which was bought out by Vector.
Okay, so it's been the same thing.
Right.
We've had them for a long
Right.
time, okay.
Yep.
Terry, is this a 3-year contract then?
Yes.
And then, does it auto-renew or?
We've been auto-renewing it just because there isn't another contractor that's big enough yet to be able to take it on. There's small contractors that'll do like one subdivision or one HOA, but they're not big enough to do a whole municipality.
Do they fog?
Yes.
Is that what they do?
Yep.
I can't recall seeing a fogger or hearing one.
They're usually at night.
It's at night,
Yeah.
so
10, 11 at night.
it
if
doesn't
you're in my
affect the
neighborhood.
people and the animals, as if they would do it when everybody could see them.
Yeah, if you're out sometimes at like 8, 9 o'clock, if you're out on a walk in your neighborhood, and you'll see it just going by us.
The motorcycle,
Yeah, exactly.
like a 4-wheeler, like an ATV type of thing with the tank going on the back.
Yeah.
And then all the complaints that we get, we just forward them on to vector disease control, and then they stay in direct contact with the people. So if people don't want it fogged in front of their home, they can set that up through vector disease. It takes us out of the middle, and they're working directly with the contractor that way.
Right, and then sometimes I think a lot of times you'll have like the adjacent open space or the river areas or things where it's just the town's not spraying, we're not gonna spray, so it's, I think that's part of it as well.
Seems like a lot of more residents are hiring those, you know, the guy
Mosquito
with,
Joe
you know,
and stuff.
Mosquito Joe, I see them in my neighborhood quite a bit too.
Yeah, and, you know, like I say, if they're out and they think the mosquitoes are that bad, they can go ahead and do that, but, you know, I think the town, city of Fort Collins doesn't even spray until, they have a Culex outbreak. You know, so I think Windsor, you know, is doing good for their citizens by having this go on each year, so I
agree,
think
Jerry.
that's a plus.
Yeah.
Fleet's on page 53 of your budget books.
Okay, fleet, some of you may know, some of you may not, we have started installing GPS on our snow fighting equipment. And the main reason for that is we'll get a call, and someone will say, we haven't seen a snow plow in this subdivision yet. And I can pull it up on the computer and I can say, Unit 74 was in your subdivision at 9 o'clock this morning, and it plowed these routes. So, it is just something that we can use to better answer their questions to where they don't feel like we're, you know, BSing them, so. We'll be getting into that more and more as we grow, and eventually, most of the fleet will probably have GPS in them. We're gonna be developing a facilities master plan, so we can look at where we are now, where we need to go, how we're gonna get there, and so that's gonna be ongoing. We wanna continue to increase security at Town Hall and all other facilities as needed, so that's gonna be part of our security assessment. And, you know, we're taking that seriously in this day and age, I think you have to. And so we're gonna continue to look at that. And then the big thing is monitor the cost of the recycling center. If you go to page
10 in your budget books.
and you look under revenue for mosquito, or for recycling, we made $120. And the money we have going out is close to 100,000. So at some point, because commodities are not bringing in what they used to, at some point, whether we like it or not, or whether the board wants to or not, we may have to make a decision on whether it's still economically okay to go down this route, or whether it's time to stop the recycling. So that's just something we need to keep looking at long and strong and hard, because when you're paying out 100 and some thousand a year of taxpayers' money, and you're only getting $120 back, you know, that's a little tough to deal with, so.
Yeah, the commodity market, just the last couple of years, I think with the tariffs and everything with China, there's just no market. This stuff's not going
Yeah,
anywhere.
and now Loveland isn't taking any plastics at all, so.
But the 120 is coming from the sale of that
Yeah,
recycling?
yes.
120 over what period of time?
What's that over, Corey, the last year-to-date, right?
Yes, year to date.
Year to date?
Yeah, but it's like $8 a month spent.
Yeah, so by next year it'll be, we'll pay you.
It doesn't even
We'll
pay
you
for the
100,
people
please
we
just
have
take
out.
it.
It doesn't even pay for the people we have out
I
there
think it's gonna cost
checking
more.
them in and out,
Right,
you
it's
know?
gonna
I
cost
mean,
more to-
Well, and I think recycling, never in my career has it been a winning proposition. It's always been something that the community does, and you underwrite it because it's something to provide for your residents. So I think the conversation is, at what point does the board say this is too much to do?
Do the current providers do recycling for folks at their house? Does
Yes.
everyone
Yeah.
be required to, you know?
I don't know that we require it, but I know that Like in my neighborhood, I think we have 2 major providers and everybody has recycling cans, so.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
Ours through
they
HOA.
usually charge a little more
Yeah.
to handle your
Right.
recycling, but it is available to the citizens.
Mhm.
It's just a matter of whether they want to pay for it or they want the town to pay for it.
Right.
So can you clarify, I think it's the contract services that we are currently doing for our special fall and spring, between those 2 days, is it 55,000?
Yeah, I think that's our budget number for that.
Yeah.
I think that's a little bit high, I guess we'll see what happens on November 2nd.
Right.
But, because our first one was about double that, but we also had every other commodity there. This one is.
It was a double 55?
No, I'm saying it was
Oh,
about, it was like 30,000, am I right? I looked at the
yeah, but we did both. This
Yeah,
one
we
only
did
did
everything,
brush.
this is just gonna be brush, so I think right now, Mayor, because we're so close to the end of the budget year, we've put that number in. And Terry, correct me, I don't know if we have a number from Hageman, an estimate for 25, or if we just
This is 12.
estimated that, because we don't actually.
We
know.
just estimated that for now. Brian went to Hageman today, and he was gonna talk to him a little more on that, because we're also having to take all of our sweepings, piles and stuff to Hageman. They handle that and recycle it. So, rather than taking it to the landfill, it's cheaper to take it to Hageman.
Is it
So
really?
we're
Okay.
doing that. So,
Yeah,
we're doing what we can.
And so last year, I think that our brush program was gonna be $90,000, $100,000, so even if we spend 50, it's half as much, you know? So it's going, but again, you know, our spring cleanup, we took everything. We had metal, paint, I think we had,
We didn't take paint.
we didn't paint, we
We did not
did,
take us.
well, we did tons of
Grills,
metal.
yeah, grills, bikes, dishwashers. that
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
Appliances, tires.
It seems like what we hear from the public,
okay.
just anecdotally, is the brush cleanup, the fall, spring yard brush cleanup, that seems to be a higher priority for the public.
Right, well, we have heard a lot of feedback from people when we close that, I mean, not tons, because the
Right.
people who were vocal were
Right.
pretty vocal.
Right.
But, so I think the idea was if the town could provide that service a couple times a year,
Right.
not man something year-round,
Right.
you know, maybe we could still provide a much-needed service without spending as much money.
Well, all the complaints that I got were folks who can't use it because they're not town residents.
Really?
Yes, and before they were utilizing it. But I just asked that question because I'm wondering in the future if it might not be prudent, rather than have an ongoing recycling center, we just go down to where we offer the community-wide. I mean, if we're only getting 100, I don't know what that equates to users, but to me, maybe, I don't know, I mean, maybe it's the dollar's so low, but do you know how many users that equates to, or?
We
I mean, are we
could
seeing an
find out how
increase?
many users we have. We tally that.
Yeah, I mean, but it might be better and more efficient if we just go to our community-wide, you know, twice a year cleanup days, rather than try to man an ongoing station.
Community brush cleanup.
The spring cleanup, we had a lot of
You talk
people.
about brush, yard waste, not,
Or are you talking about recycling?
or you talk about
Well, we
recycling?
did, in the spring, we
Yeah.
did both, and
We
then in
did
the
both
fall, we
before,
only
but
did
not
one.
doing- right.
And if it's 55 grand, then you know, I don't
Okay,
know,
maybe do
maybe do
both.
both.
People were really happy we did that this spring.
Yeah.
Everybody that came through
Yeah.
said what a great thing that was, because, you know, one year you may wanna do, like TVs and stuff. One year you may wanna do mattresses. So everybody has, you know, we're taking care of everybody, like every other year, but,
So we don't see stuff thrown out on the side of the road?
oh yeah, we still see that,
We still
pick
see
it
it.
up and.
Yeah.
Right, and I was gonna say, there's also, I just went to the CML Policy Committee on Friday, and there's possibility of a bill right now that would be the deposit program that they have in Oregon, deposit on bottles, so you
Yeah,
would,
I've seen
5 or 10 cent deposit. So I don't know if it's gonna go anywhere, but then people, those are only to go to some kind of collection distribution place. So they could markedly change our program to where,
Yeah.
you know, people are taking those on their own to somewhere to get revenue, and we would have even less chance.
Aluminum's making a big change right now too, to where if you don't have the right grade of aluminum, then they don't even want it. So,
Recycling is-
everything's changing in the recycling world.
Okay.
Okay, well, what we can do though, so, you're on recycling bid, I think it'd be prudent to, staff to take a look and see how many people we're serving a year, and we can bring this back to the board, I don't think.
I mean, we might want to reevaluate that.
Right.
Corey and I will,
And it sounds like you would be on board with that, because it's creating more problems
Right.
internally than, I think, positive.
because right now, everybody's saying our recycling area isn't big enough. You know, so we'd have to double the size of what we currently have, and there's another $100 and some thousand, so.
Well,
I like what you were talking, I like the spring idea and include, yeah, and publicize it. We'll take mattresses and TVs this year, whatever. You know, people do spring cleanup, that's a good service and opportunity. And then the fall cleanup, I think is really important. We could probably do that for 55.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and
that's-
Terry, if, I think as a part of the discussion, because we heard a couple good questions here, as far as I know, all the haulers also offer, curbside service.
Yes.
I think it'd be good to know to confirm that.
Yeah.
Because if all of our residents have that option, I think that's a different conversation than if there are some neighborhoods that really don't have that option. So
Yeah,
I
we'll
think-
get that confirmed.
Yeah.
Miles made the point a long time ago, we were talking about this, you know, it's kind of a community service and encourages people to take care of their property and properly dispose of some things and so.
For the brush recycling.
For brush, but also, you know, I hate going through a couple of communities and you see mattresses on the side of the street, I mean, old selfers, whatever, you know, so. If we can do it in a halfway affordable way, I think it's a real value.
People know it's coming up in the spring.
Yeah.
They
It's real
save that
value.
And
mattress
there is a company
for
in
few
Loveland
minutes.
that recycles the mattresses,
Really?
so they can be on site and they
Oh, wow.
take all the material off and
What's
then
your
they grind
mattress?
up all the springs and
TVs
stuff.
are the hard one though. Nobody takes TVs.
Loveland,
Recycle Center in Fort Collins will.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so Loveland.
Pay.
Yeah, you have to pay.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, like, so if we offer it
Yeah.
in town, we,
Right.
But I'd hate to see it go. I think I've got more complaints about rush recycling than anything else.
yeah.
So, but I think if it keeps getting more expensive, obviously we have to look at our options. Today I got a message from somebody at Steeplechase within my district who, is it Gallegos, I think it is, the sanitation?
Mm-hmm.
And he's part of that family, and he wanted to talk to somebody, and he came to me as his representative, wanted to talk to somebody in the town about our recycling program and the future of it. So I gave him your name just today.
Thank you.
So, and, you know, it's just kind of, this discussion, it would be kind of interesting, you know, maybe there are other options out there if we look
We-
around too.
Waste Management handles all of ours now.
Right.
Right.
So I have no idea what he wants to propose or
Well, it'd
say.
be good, I would love it if there were additional options out there for us, really.
It may be best if this goes to, you know, becomes privatized.
They
That would
do
be
our
great.
whole subdivision.
If you can monitor it too, Shane, because I think a couple people have said it, I've seen it, I've gotten emails from, we use Ram Waste and we have a recycling bin as well, but increasingly you're getting the thing saying, whoops, we no longer take this and that, and the glass, don't bother putting glass. It's getting so restrictive with the materials that truly are recyclable or that they'll accept. It's getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah, because they're in the same commodity market
Yeah.
that everybody
Yeah.
is.
There's no place to send the stuff.
That's right.
So it ends up in the landfill.
That's right.
Yeah.
Ends up costing us
Well,
anyway.
but I mean, glass is, because I know we need to move on, but glass, I mean, you could almost go out with a shovel and dig silica out of the ground as cheap as you can recycle a glass bottle. It's just not, people feel good about recycling it, but it's really the money's not really there. Okay, Terry, please go on.
So here we kind of break down the sale of the recycling commodities. Back in 2018, we were getting $2,074, which is far more than 120. Still didn't get us what we needed, but it helped. You can see what we spent on putting the recycling center out here. What we spent for spring cleanup, and then fall cleanup's based at about $12,500, and then yard waste rebates. The other cost is we'll have some big dumpsters out there, and of course, they're gonna have to come and pick those up and dump them, so there'll be costs for that as well, so. Since we don't know exactly how much that is, that's why you're seeing about 50,000, 55,000. Okay, next slide.
Page 10 of your budget book.
This isn't new. We do snow meetings and training with staff over a snow plan each snow year. And we always have at least 2 contractors on standby for snow removal for up to 10 storms, which costs us roughly about $60,000, depending on the magnitude of the storm. But what we use the contractors for is to work on the cul-de-sacs out in the outlying areas, so they can work on the cul-de-sacs, so we can continue to work on the arterials and collector roads. So.
But Terry, this cost is only when we use them.
Right.
It's not costing to stand by.
Right. At some point, they may get to that, you know,
Right, yep.
but they're not there yet, and I'm not gonna bring it up.
Oops.
Do we still use parks for?
Yes, we do utilize a few people from parks, and that's why we do the snow plowing each year as well. And then almost everyone goes to the Snow and Ice Conference over in Loveland, so they learn all about GPS, proper way to use all the different snow plows and the sanders and so on and so forth. So it's good training each year.
I'm sure Eric charges you for those parks people.
No, but I like to thank him.
I think that's it. Yep.
Okay.
So any questions in regards to each department? I think I had notes in there, hopefully you all got the copies with the notes to where it pretty much, you know, tells you why it's in there and what we're using it for.
Thanks, Terry.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, sir. The winds are beautiful. See that sweet, sweet bird?
There you go, Scott.
Just stand up here for now. Before we get into the next slide, I just wanted to, the 2019 number up here is obviously a projection. It's not where we're at today. But this is new dwelling units, and you can see obviously over the last 3 years we've been off the charts. And the 956 is based on average monthly dwelling units through September of this year. So if we hit our average the last 3 years, or the last 3 months of this year, that's where we would be. And I know we've got several multifamily building permits out on Steeplechase that are in process and will be issued in the last quarter. So that number may be conservative. We may still hit 1,000 dwelling units this year. So obviously the reason for that introduction is Robin Holner, our permit technician, has been the sole person issuing all of those permits. We do have some cross coverage in customer service, and in the last year, you'll recall, we implemented having a Safe Built employee come in 2 days a week. They actually come in 1 full day a week, and then they come in 2 half days, and they're always trying to monitor when those are the strategically best times to have that help come in. But something we've learned over the last year is that they're great at doing the data entry and using the community core software that Safe Built provides. But when it comes into the actual calculation of fee estimates for a commercial industrial project or for calculating fees in different metro districts around town, that really is more of a specialized background knowledge than just being able to plug that permit technician into any of Safe Built's jurisdictions. It does require some institutional knowledge, so what we've ended up doing is having Robin take all of those complicated permits, and only she issues multifamily or commercial or industrial permits. So we can go to the next slide.
So Scott, is that enough time? Oh, I'm sorry. Is that enough time that Safe Built's coming in the day and 2 half days? Is that enough?
I think Robin would say yes, because they're getting the data entry and the entry-level type work. That's really helping her a ton when she's got a stack of permits, and they can help just get them all in the system, get them all in the review process. That is the biggest help that position's done. But like I said, for those more complicated or complex tasks, another day probably wouldn't help much. it would just help with the volume, is really what that is.
Just go along that same line. If they were spread out, it'd be an average of like 3 per day. I'm assuming they all come in groups, right? They come in bunches.
Yeah, and some builders will bring it in a stack of 20 new homes.
Okay. And so approximately how much time, of course it depends on what it is, right? But approximately how much time per permit?
10 to 14 working days.
Okay.
And that's both a town and
Okay.
safe-built.
No, I think his question is, how long does it take us to review a building permit?
Well, yeah, both. Yeah, that question.
Well, yeah, 10 to 14 working days
But
is the,
for a staff person, how much time would it take me as a staff person to go through a permit?
so the process, the applicant drops it off. Robin does the initial review, makes sure that it's a complete application, makes sure it's meeting town requirements like setback requirements, things like that. Passes on the application to engineering for drainage review, those types of things, reviews the plot plans. And then, once it's determined that it meets all of our standards, it's shipped over to Safe Built, and then it typically takes about 7 days for their plan review. They ship it back to us, and we assign the fees based on the valuation, and generally speaking, 10 to 14 working days.
It probably takes a staff person 8 hours.
Oh, no, maybe for a complex commercial, industrial, or multifamily project, it takes more time. But no, for a standard single-family home, or.
A couple hours.
Yeah, it's not that much time,
Okay.
no.
And so Safe Built, well, okay, go ahead, I got it.
Yeah, and then, obviously, there are all those
Yeah.
other one-stop permits for a water heater, roof, or
Okay.
things like that, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Scott, on your prior slide, that number, the 968, whatever it was,
Mhm.
it said dwelling units, so is that, a duplex is counted as 2, a quad is 4?
Right, right.
Apartments in there too?
Yeah, dwelling units include apartments, townhomes, condos, duplexes, single-family homes, any new dwelling units.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so yeah, our budget areas of focus are the roads and traffic. Obviously, we're working on the multimodal transportation plan. And you'll see in a slide here, we've got the completion of that project in here. And then also the area of focus from the strategic plan that we're also addressing the downtown parking issue with budget item for update of the downtown parking plan. So, we can go on with. So again, yeah, the first slide had the dwelling units. This is just single-family homes, and again, 880 is a projection based on actual permits issued through September. So, so yeah, the building permit technician position backup. One of the other things that we've found with the Safe Built staff is obviously they have to pre-plan when that person is gonna be in town hall. And that doesn't always correspond with times when Robin might be sick, or if she has vacation planned. We do our best to schedule them to come in maybe an extra day, but it's been somewhat tenuous at times, especially when the bug goes through the building like it did a couple of weeks ago. But, Robin's been doing an awesome job for one person primarily to issue, starting in 2016 through now. I'm amazed that she's doing the work of 2.5 building permit technicians right now. So the in-house backup would be expected to be fully proficient, be able to issue commercial, industrial, and multifamily permits. They'd be able to prepare fee estimates. Stacy leans on Robin whenever she's got a commercial prospect and they wouldn't need a fee estimate. She's got to drop everything, and preparing a fee estimate in a lot of ways is more convoluted and complicated than just issuing a permit, because she's got to get raw water information from John, she's got to get drainage information from Doug, she's got to get, all of those pieces have to be compiled, and then there's still always some nuances of metro districts and things that you have to factor in the brand's PUD and what that says about all of the incentives and things like that. So that person would ensure that when Robin takes a vacation, we're not gonna stop anything, it's gonna be processed as normal, so.
You know, I absolutely see the need for something there. We've talked about if and when a recession comes and things slow down, that's one of the reasons we say go for contract service, because you can gear up or gear down.
Right.
This position, let's suppose we hit a severe recession next year or the year after.
You go back to 2014-15 numbers. right?
Yeah.
Or
How would we use this position then?
So administrative support is also a big need in the community
Okay.
development department. So I anticipate that even when permits are not at their current levels, there are so many administrative tasks that we currently have professional engineers and professional planners
Okay.
doing data entry and things like that, that, you know, we are leaning somewhat on Christine and Shane's office right now for some of those functions. But, you know, just as recently as last month, I had someone with a master's degree in planning, booking hotel rooms for planning commissioners and doing things like that, that can be something that this person would be doing instead of building permits. Because you know, right now, we write every memo, every letter, every zoning violation. We're doing all that follow-up with our professional staff, and the administrative functions could be much enhanced, yeah.
I have a question related to the weekly update. So in the weekly update, it showed these single-family building permits, but total building permits to date at 2476. So what, the difference is all that is commercial?
No, so.
It could be like a roof permit or a water heater.
That's-
Anytime somebody comes in.
Because it says building permits though. So
Right,
those, what do those,
So building permits include
they could be small
a new
things.
roof, a new deck,
Basements.
basement remodels or finishes, those kind of things, yeah. And we have already surpassed 2018's total, in total building permits.
Okay.
So, and I think we're about.
I think we should rename that then. I mean, it doesn't make sense to call them building,
Probably a lot of roofs.
you know what I mean? Because I mean, some of those probably equate to building, but if it is other things, it's kind of a weird name to give it, because it kind of connotates like a structure, but it's
Yeah.
really a,
I think it's because it's all governed by the
Yeah.
building code, so it's just a
Okay.
permit under the building code is really.
Right, and that's why we always try to single out things like this, Mayor, like when we talk about the number of structures and things, because these are the more serious part of the workload. The other ones take time, but you know, a water heater isn't
Yeah.
that big of a deal.
So,
Yeah, there you go.
this,
Really big deal.
so this is the downtown parking study update that I mentioned. Obviously, the DDA put this original study together in 2012. We inserted $40,000 as a budget number, and I since talked to David, and since he's just coming off of the parking study in Loveland, he recommended that we might want to look at another $5,000 or $10,000 on top of this $40,000. But we are proposing, and I believe the DDA board has supported splitting that cost with the town, is that correct?
Ask the mayor
no,
if she's on that.
it has not, I think
It hasn't
it's
gone
probably
over.
on the agenda for Wednesday.
Okay. so I
But we
just-
have not, I mean, we talked about it, but we haven't, I don't think officially.
Okay.
Yeah, we've met with Matt Ashby and talked
That's
about
what I
it.
was-
Are we thinking the same entity though would perform the study?
Not necessarily.
Or it's gonna go out for bid?
Right, it would be an RFP, is what we tentatively.
Because I'm
discussed.
wondering though, if we couldn't get some efficiencies or optimize and keep the budget, if we were to, be able to utilize the same group who went, you know, preliminarily, 7 years ago, went through and kind of, and had a lot of that background
Right.
information for us.
So Fair and Piers was the firm that conducted the initial study for the DDA. Just the simple fact that we're working with Fair and Piers on the transportation master plan right now. I know that almost all of that same, we wouldn't get the same team from 7 years ago, that's almost
No.
guaranteed. But
No,
yeah, they would have the.
But when they'd have their information in
Right.
there, whereas another group is gonna have to come in and create all of that, all over from scratch, a lot of
Right.
that. Because a lot of that has not changed. I mean, some of it, a little bit has started to change now.
Yeah.
On, you know, the east side, but the west side is pretty much the same.
We've had
So the
that
study
exact,
was done.
yeah, we've had that exact conversation with leadership as well. I think This block right here is obviously the big change in downtown, and there may be some additional focus in this update on that area. But at the same time, you know, we talked to Carlos Hernandez with Foxtel Hernandez, who was actually with Fair and Piers.
Yeah.
When we did that study.
I remember that.
And he suggested a firm out of Louisville that he works with to simply do an update of the data. You know, they can do the survey to see what parking's being utilized, where we're having, I guess, a saturation point, and where we're reaching the threshold in the document, where the next steps need to be taken. So we might be able to save by directly contracting with the data collection agency, but probably an RFP for these focused updates and maybe some detailed implementation strategies regarding more efficient use of the surface lots that we've already got downtown. So that's.
Yeah, and Carlos did tell us when we met that he didn't plan on giving us a bid on this. I don't know if it's because of his workload or what, but.
He's actually taking a sabbatical next year, I think, and so he just wanted to be upfront that he was glad to kind of help us get in the right direction, but he wouldn't be submitting a bid, so. And then carried over for 2020, again, is the Transportation Master Plan. The $65,000 is just an estimate. We haven't spent half of this year's budget number, so we'll refine that at the end of the year and carry over what we have left to complete the study. But we are targeting a February date to get it before the town board for adoption. We've got additional outreach now that we'll be having some conversations about the actual recommendations that Fair and Piers is putting together. We'll have additional open house at the fire district in December. We're hoping to try and partner with Windsor Wonderland and have a table somewhere or a booth where we can maybe get some input while we've got that event going on. But yeah, we're on schedule for early next year adoption.
Looks like you're up, Mr. McCarter.
Expenses start on page 6 in your budget books.
Let's roll to the next slide. This doesn't have anything on it. Just some parameters of what our relationship is. Town attorney appointed by you under Charter Section 9.1. Assistant town attorney under Charter Section 9.1E actually works under my supervision, although the current assistant town attorney, Kim Emo, works as a direct appointee by you in her capacity as town prosecutor, and we can talk some more about that in a second. Currently, Kim's position is at 3/4 time. What I have suggested, next slide please, is approximately 2/3 of the .75 FTE for Kim is spent in her capacity as town prosecutor. So 1/3 of that .75 is as assistant town attorney, 2/3 is in her capacity as town prosecutor. So roughly 20 hours a week as town prosecutor. Let's go forward. Okay, so what you see on the bottom line is that my office budget is approaching $55,000 higher than it was last year. There are two basic reasons for that that are illustrated here. One is that I anticipate we will be filing an eminent domain case to recover some, to get some right-of-way on County Road 5, Fairgrounds Avenue, northwest corner of the intersection of 392 and County Road 5. I'm cautiously optimistic, but not entirely optimistic we will be able to settle that, because we're pretty far apart on the appraised values. If you look in my line items, I've budgeted a total of $85,000 for contract legal services. 75 of that is for the eminent domain attorney, and 10,000 is to wrap up the Comcast franchise renegotiation with Kissinger and Fellman. So that's a pretty significant increase. And also, what I have asked Shane to recommend is that we increase Ms. Emel's time from 30 hours a week to 35 hours a week. And I understand, and so the math, if you wouldn't mind scrolling forward, Carl. Dean has provided these numbers, and I confirmed with him earlier today that these numbers are based upon Kim's current hourly equivalent as a salaried employee. So those are the differences. The reason we have the 40-hour figure on the bottom line is that I understand there was an inquiry the last time we all gathered on this, suggesting that perhaps Kim should go from 30 hours to 40 hours. What I can say is I didn't ask for it, but I can support it in talking with Kim about what she does and what she needs to do for this community. I can support the 10-hour-a-week increase. The tricky part about that is that Kim is going to want to talk with you confidentially about her role as as town prosecutor in an executive session that's scheduled for the 4th of November. So she will want to talk to you directly as her client, as any lawyer would, on a year-end basis to talk about what those numbers might look like. I haven't really spoken with her about that. Shane and I have talked a little bit about it, but based on just her current hourly plus a small merit increase, those are the numbers you would be looking at for Kim's increase in either 5 hours or 10 hours a week. Yes, Dave.
On the prior slide where you said that year-over-year budget increase was 50-some?
Yep.
Does that include then 14, or is that?
I think it includes the 14.
Yeah.
Yes.
But not?
But not the 28.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I didn't understand.
So some of these slides were prepared before I knew the numbers that Dean supplied a little later, and so that's why I remember.
Ian, just to clarify though, you said that you feel like based upon the total work volume, where we're headed and stuff, that you feel like the 40 hours could be substantiated?
I can support that, yes.
Or we could just pay her salary and squeeze 60 hours out of her.
Save that for the executive session.
Talk with her about that.
I was always a salary.
So yeah, it's a unique position because the same person is serving in both roles, one of which is hired through me, through me, the other is directly. If you look at the org chart, you can see it illustrated. So it's just unique because we have the same person doing it, and doing it very well, I might add. So if there's nothing else, then that I believe concludes my slides.
Sir?
Yep.
It starts on page 12 of your budget list.
So I didn't obviously submit a lot of these numbers because our friend Dennis did, so if you have any questions, I will give you his address.
His cell phone.
The engineering department staff enhances the town through high-quality, innovative management of infrastructure, design, construction, water resources, and street and water quality. But mainly our focus is, of course, roads and traffic and water in the town. Get the next slide. Some of the accomplishments in 2019, we oversaw the 2 new roundabouts that were completed, the cemetery parking lot, the water line replacement maintenance project on Walnut, $2 million worth of roadway, concrete, improvement maintenance project, 7th and Main restriping, obviously the 3rd and Main restriping out here, the bulb outs, the signage, and then the widening project also up on Harmony between County Road 13 and Duncroft. Staff oversaw that, so we do a lot of project management, contract management and engineering.
Just have to give a comment. A lot of successes there, but the difference that's some from Maine is really noticeable.
Yeah.
That's something we need to celebrate.
They did a really good job. Personnel changes, not a lot of change to the budget for engineering. No new hires are expected for 2020. But I am evaluating kind of some reclassifications of the 2 vacancies that we have now and looking at that. I just started that process with HR. I obviously took over some of the duties that Dennis had as well as the water resource manager has. I plan on keeping some of those, so I think there is a potential to reclass that. I don't expect the budget to grow at all, and maybe even hopefully decrease it a little bit.
John, curious, the gentleman we met earlier who had some background in traffic management and engineering, I mean, it sounds almost like it could be in either one of your departments. Is there?
That's kind of the plan, is actually
To
to hire
share.
a traffic engineer, another civil engineer, and then like a water resources administrator
Yeah.
versus a manager. So it's somebody that can do all those day-to-day tasks for me, that normally, you wouldn't want me to be doing anymore.
So when you say no new hires, though, those positions are already here today?
Yeah, so
They're budgeted, they're just vacant right now.
they're just vacant right now, yeah.
Okay.
I like that concept, because one of the things we talked about in the past was, going back a number of years, the silos. And it seems like traffic and engineering and planning, all that has to flow together somehow. So
Very close.
finding a person that can wear different hats at the same time, I think if that's possible.
At the same time?
Or work with different teams. Right.
Well, and part of it again with the remodel of town hall, with the security upgrades and the remodel, I think we're gonna be able to take community development and merge it better than it is now. We'll still have some engineers and some planners, but we're gonna also have space where we have everybody. And so just kind of how we do that and how we make sure we have all those teams working together.
I think that's really important.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then just one of the ones that, I kind of shared this with Terry's budget as well, that the water assessment, these are the costs that I put in that are going up next year. Northwell is 3.5%, that might change. We don't quite know yet, they're holding public meetings right now, so it might be higher. But we'll update the board when that comes, when we do the rates.
And have we heard, have we managed to get them to come here?
We're still working on it, but they said they would come here, so we're trying to get it done in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, they're having 2 public hearings, but both.
They already had
in
one,
Lucerne.
and then the next one's October 21st at 1 PM, and they're in their office in Lucerne.
So we have requested that they come to Windsor to meet, because I think most of our residents that would be concerned about this shouldn't be expected to drive to Lucerne. So we're trying to get them to come here to have a meeting as well.
This is based upon our providers' water rates. This is in addition to the, what did we already do, 10% per year?
Well, this is what they're gonna charge us, and then we'll bring to you in November what our rates are gonna need to be in order to pay for not only this increase, but the NIST project.
Right, okay.
Sorry, John, this is not the treated, this is not the
This
water.
is treated water.
This is their the charge to us.
They're charged to treat it and transmission and distribution to the town. And then water assessments increased a little bit by 6.25%, and part of that is mainly due to if we have to run any foreign water in the new cash system, they do now have an assessment charge for that. And for example, we had a couple years where we had to bring the Kern Reservoir up to a certain level so New Cash could get their remaining water out. And the only way we can do that is to run our treated water source, the CBT, into the reservoir. And then I luckily gave them wet water this next year, so we didn't have to pay that bill, but we put a little bit of money in the budget in case we either have to do that or we have to run more water to Future Legends or whatever it is. That's how we'll get that water down into the town. So we put a little bit in the budget for that. Things like $15,000 a year.
You gave them wet water.
Instead of cash, yep.
Oh,
Wasn't
that's the term of art there?
Yep.
Wasn't dehydrated.
Dry water? Yeah.
Always prefer to give wet water than cash.
Yeah, I think Miles has a question.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yep.
The Fort Collins Loveland, that doesn't go through our town system.
Actually, it does. They do treat us, we have a water master meter out on County Road 13, I believe. So remember, we have a contract with them for 110 million gallons a year. That does come into the town, but that's the town of Windsor's water. But they do serve all customers west of County Road 13.
Yeah, and it's the same with Northwell. We have a contract with them,
Right.
the town, and they have a lot of Windsor customers that aren't through us, so it's a little bit convoluted there.
So that 3% increase, it's a very small piece of our portfolio, right?
Yeah, that's the smallest piece of it.
And so staff always blends those, so we
Right.
take the total increase and we try to blend it for the customer, so.
I have a question in the actual budget here, under the fleet transfer portion. And so it covers 3 items: fleet transfer, information tech transfer, facility service transfer. It's increased, proposed this year about 30 grand, and then next year it's proposed another 40 grand. What's the reason, I mean, what's causing the increase here?
It's mostly IT. IT increased significantly, the methodology that we kind of associate with.
Yeah, I think all those new hires require computers, IT support.
So formerly, we used to charge departments back on the number of service calls that they put in. So we would just take service calls and blend those and charge. Now they've gone to a lot more sophisticated, where they take the computer, the software, they look at every device and charge departments that way. So some departments you'll see that have gone down, some have gone up quite a bit, and it's just based on that kind of device calculation and what people have on the system. So overall, when you go through the IT budget, you'll see that it's not that IT is just blowing up, it's just some departments, all of a sudden their share is going different based on the number of devices they have.
So what would cause that, though? I mean, more employees needing more computers, or?
Well, no, because it's just we haven't charged back on device before. Previously, we charged back based on the number of service calls they had. So it's just changing our methodology. And then also some departments, like engineers, for example, have they have the best computers because they need them to run really expensive software. They have proprietary software, so all those things kind of calculate in for them. Whereas before, I would say the engineering department really hasn't paid its equitable share into IT, because they do have.
Well, I noticed most departments are staying virtually kind of within the realm the same, or less. But not to pick on Eric, but Parks and Rec, almost all of theirs have a $50,000 increase throughout every department. And so that's where, in that meeting, that's why I asked, what does that consist of?
When you get to the police department, you're gonna say, wow.
What is it comprised of? What does that mean?
So we could, when Corinne comes in for IT, I think she could explain, I mean, I don't know if she could explain it any differently than I have, but it's basically just the way that we're charging departments now. So, like the police department, because they're a pretty device rich department, they have units in their vehicles and everywhere else. Their increase is extremely high this year. I've heard a lot from the chief of police about that. But for the most part, these are all general fund departments, and so if the PD is paying it and engineering's not paying it anymore, it's all coming out of the same pot. It's really, as it hits our enterprise funds, if that was really disproportionate, but otherwise, it's literally just kind of moving it around the same budget.
Usually we do the inter-department transfers, just you're tracking something. You're trying to measure something that is giving you a better view toward planning, I guess, if you will. What are you getting out of that from an IT?
So for the IT, I think the finance person step on me, but really, if we were only a general fund government, we probably wouldn't need to do that. But because it's a service that provides services for our enterprises as well, it's a way for us to account for those costs and to charge everybody a portion of it.
Any other? I think that was my last slide. So.
And that is? Thank you. That's the Dean Show.
Where are we at on, I know this is really quick, we need to make it, where are we at on rehiring a Dennis?
Well, that's what you can say. So he's reassessing. There's basically 2 vacancies. So we have Dennis, the civil engineer, who's also the director. And the question is, we don't really need a director of engineering anymore. And so John's doing his assessment now. I think we've circled around the idea of transportation being probably a bit of more relevant skill set for Windsor today than having another civil engineer. And so he's kind of doing that assessment. Do we hire a transportation person as a civil? And then instead of having another director, probably some kind of engineering lead, chief engineer kind of position, which could be for probably an incumbent. So he's just kind of doing his assessment now and determining what skill set works best for today. And I would just argue that I don't think that having another civil engineer is exactly the skill set we need. So Anyway, yeah, so we're going through that. So
Okay.
I would hope that we're advertising at least this year still.
Oh, yeah, we expect to have probably the supervisory position filled fairly quickly, and then the transportation / whatever we decide by, I'd say, mid-November. What's the timeframe?
And then I think the water.
The water will come next spring.
Post
If
it.
if I can
next spring,
survive,
good one.
if I can survive.
During runoff.
Then mid-November to be filled or to be advertised?
Oh, to be
To be
filled?
Yeah,
That's
Filled.
aggressive.
yeah.
6 weeks.
All right.
HR's on that.
4
Good.
weeks. Okay, so we haven't posted it yet? have we? Okay.
Okay, where do we find
Okay,
finance in here?
page 5.
This memorized?
Starts on 4.
Okay, so finance is pretty easy. We have only the one slide. New things for this year, 2 large items and 1 small. The top line payroll clerk, we're asking for a full-time, that's a new position we don't currently have. Excuse me, I got that cold everyone else does.
I don't have it, don't give it to me.
I don't either. I don't believe it's against my religion.
But speaking in front of the town board,
So
Try to get sick during budget
that
season.
number, that 73 number there, that represents as if they were working here with benefits the entire year. That most likely won't happen, but we put that whole number in there as a placeholder. The next biggest one is on the bottom bullet there. We always put contract service money in the budget to pay, we don't do any sales tax auditing in-house, we contract that out. We had our first construction use tax audit on building permits, I think it was last year. And I think we're gonna get into that more as we work with more national type home builders. That was they requested a refund of somewhere in the neighborhood of $73,000. And they, referring to over 100 building permits. It was Cal Atlantic Homes, and like I said, they're a pretty big outfit, and I imagine we're gonna start running into more of that. So part of the line item is $20,000 for business sales tax, retail sales tax licenses, and construction use tax. The new part for this year is in contract service is another $30,000 to hire someone to look at our sales tax code. Our sales tax code is basically the same one that we had used since 2005. A couple of years ago, if you recall, we adopted that uniform definitions project that CML was working on. And that's been the only real major change to our code since we started collecting our own taxes. We want to clean up a few things that are fairly old and not really applicable anymore. And I hear a lot anymore, I'm on the sales tax committee with CML. And of course, this Wayfair internet sales tax case has caused quite a buzz. Their emphasis to us was home rule. Home rule cities don't do anything on the code that's going to contradict the state code, because we worked so hard to get that uniform tax definition. So that's in the works, so I have money in the budget for that study. Finally,
Oh, and you didn't cover the Cheryl's reclassification?
Yeah.
You skipped over.
the one in the middle, the smaller dollar amount, as Shane said, that's addressing Cheryl Turner. She's been doing this, she's been here in the finance department for only a little shorter time than I have. And in that time, she's been basically the de facto deputy finance director. She's been doing that work and stepping in for me after my various adventures over the years. And the department
continues without missing a beat. So I think this is the third time that I've asked to change her title, and the $5,000 there, that takes care of the salary and the taxes and the whole ball of wax.
My question is in regards to the sales tax code. I think that you were telling us last week about, right now, vendors that collect sales tax on internet sales, et cetera, are paying us on a voluntary basis or on the honor system, basically, et cetera.
Yes.
Does the sales tax code clean that up? Would that?
That's something I would like to address in this case, that we're planning to do.
Well, it wouldn't make a requirement. The Wayfair case is different than Colorado because in Wayfair, all the municipalities have the same tax amount. I believe it's all remitted through the state and dispersed out. So there, I think the case kind of relied on the fact that in those circumstances, an out-of-the-state vendor could, did need to follow the law. In Colorado, where we have 102 home rule municipalities, I think about 70 or so of us that self-collect, it's just a lot more cumbersome, and so I think that all these efforts that the town's doing, that the state's doing, are to make it easier and easier for them to voluntarily remit, but I don't think there's going to be any legislation to that effect anytime soon. I think the state may address its own for the statutory towns and the home rule municipalities that collect, and then as a community, we're going to have that discussion on, gee, should we collect through the state's portal like everybody else, or do we want to continue to keep our hands on it? So that's going to be a conversation in the next couple of years. So I think this isn't going to make it easier for us, Paul, other than just our sales tax code is over a decade old, and I'm sure that there's a lot of definitions in there that are just, I don't know. I don't know how we define brewery. I bet we don't define it the way that breweries are. We would probably define it the way that Budweiser was.
I know one when I see one.
Yeah, that's right. Because your car's there.
In fact, the Wayfair decision itself, the judge that wrote the opinion says that we're supporting and upholding this primarily because it's not unduly cumbersome for the filer. Because in that case, as you said, it was a single point of filing. I think if they came to Colorado and tried to enforce it, they'd be challenged because of the decision itself.
That's right. And that's why I think it's been so good, and I've heard this at CML, obviously through Dean, that all these online vendors are voluntarily complying and remitting because I don't think they want to go to the Supreme Court, and it's easier to just kind of get in line with what's imminent. But yeah, it doesn't apply for Colorado.
Question, for the sales tax and building permit audit, is that something that's gonna happen every year, or is this like, we'll fix it and going forward it'll be better?
Oh, no, it's money, it's contract money.
Right.
We started out with only less than $10,000. Our tax auditing firm is RRG, Revenue Recovery Group.
Okay.
And
Let me just say
they
yes.
serve quite a few municipalities in Colorado. Now, before a couple of years ago, we didn't do many audits. But then, like I said, when we got that big one from Cal Atlantic Homes on the use tax, that cost us more money.
So they were disputing our building permit?
Yes.
Collect.
They were asking for a refund on the building.
So this will be something we'll have to budget every year?
Yes, yes. Not necessarily the code rewrite.
Right, but the other
the audit stuff, yes.
building permit. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
No,
Okay.
Mayor.
Anything on future town board meetings?
So I just want to point out, next Monday, we're going to take a little time out from reviewing town board budget requests because I'm going to be out of town at a conference. I fly out on Friday to the ICMA conference in Nashville, Tennessee. Great learning opportunity. I appreciate the board's support and letting me go to that. So I'll be out Friday through Wednesday. So during that time out, we'll have the DDA here doing their budget presentation to the board. We'll have the Windsor Housing Authority discussion that Dr. Jones asked for. And then Crystal and Doug are going to present kind of the redistricting maps. Obviously with our growth, we're out of whack and the town's going to need to redistrict. And so, they're gonna come and just give you an overlay of what the new district's gonna look like. So, that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thanks for.